Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Private Practice with Soul podcast. This is the first podcast for counsellors that just don't align with the traditional approaches to business and that want to use their spiritual gifts, talents, and interests to create, you guessed it, a private practice with soul. So, look, leave it to me to provide you with everything you need, including strategies that you can use to increase your income, reduce your workload, and of course, increase inquiries and referrals to your beautiful soul-led private practice. I love it so much. If you haven't done it already, grab your journal, grab your pen, and let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome to another episode of the Private Practice with Soul podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Storme, and it's so great to be here with you today. Now, today's topic is going to be about high-functioning autism. And the reason why is because I mentioned it sort of off the cuff in passing in my previous episode. I've had a number of requests from people to ask me what it is and, how it affects your business and stuff like that. So, okay. As I said, this isn't something that I've really discussed in the past. I've alluded to it, but I haven't ever really discussed it in the past. But I'm happy to go there. So, I just want to preface this by saying that this is just my story. All right, I'm taking my psychologist hat off. Not that I am one anymore, but I'm taking that off. I'm taking the clinical stuff off. I'm taking my therapist stuff off. I'm just being Brooklyn now, and this is just my story. Okay, so I guess the thing is that I wasn't diagnosed until fairly late in my life, and there are a number of reasons for that. I guess when I was growing up, looking back, there were definitely signs. I mean, we've got video, we've got photo, we've got mum's diary, all that sort of stuff, where she's expressing like concern for my development. Like little things, like just these days you'd probably get an OT involved, but back then it kind of like there was just this lack of awareness. But anyway, there were definitely signs when I was little, like it took me ages to learn how to crawl, and I would do everything in a not a logical way. I would find my own way to do things. I would see the world very, very differently to everybody else. I felt on the inside, like I can remember some experiences of being in kindergarten. I think I must have been 4 years old, where I just felt like I was an adult and I used to boss other kids around. And I used to always make sure that everybody else was doing what they were told to do. I was a dobber. I was that person. So you can imagine like going from kindergarten to primary school probably wasn't that popular. And I did get bullied. I was that girl that, other kids would chase her to provoke me into responding in a way that they thought was just hysterical. But for me, I was so frustrated and so mad and so angry that they were provoking me, and I would carry on. I really struggled with making friends and fitting in, but I was always the teacher's pet because I was the good girl. I would always do really well in school. Even though my intelligence was just average, I used to apply myself. I took school very, very seriously, and I took all of the rules very, very seriously. And as I said, I was the one that was like telling the teacher when somebody was not following the rules. Like if we were told you had to sit boy, girl, or something like that, and there were two girls sitting together, I was the first one to go and dob. I must have just been so annoying for my classmates. I mean, I can't believe that I was that person, but I was, and I took pride in it. Like I felt like I was a good girl when I was following the rules. So this became reinforced, because when I followed the rules, I got acknowledged. I would get a gold star from the teacher. I would constantly get awards for being conscientious. I would get principal's awards at school for being like on time every day and always doing the right thing. I mean, when I was growing up at primary school, we didn't have like wrapper free days like they do now, or wrapper free lunches. We just used to get told, go outside for an hour, take your lunch with you and put your rubbish in the bin. Well, I used to go and tell the yard duty teacher if somebody didn't put their rubbish in the bin, and then 5 minutes later I was getting chased and picked on and hollered at and all those sorts of things. And then I would cry and I would have not a meltdown, but I don't think it was a meltdown, I don't know, but I would cry, I'd bawl my eyes out and I'd be very upset. But then a teacher would come and reinforce that I had done the right thing. So there was like this behavioural reinforcement of my, I don't know, symptoms, if you want to call them that. And then when I was at home, I was the eldest of 6 children. So I also knew the importance of rules and order and all that sort of stuff. And so I used to take it upon myself to make sure that my siblings had got their school uniforms ready for the next day, had their lunches ready for the next day. Everything was lined up on the bench in piles of, so I used to make piles of clothes and lunches for my siblings. And my mum taught me how to do this, and then I took it over very, very proudly, of course. This whole thing of I had to get everybody's pajamas ready. And there was a little cubby in the pantry at kid height. And I used to put everybody's pajamas in there. And then I used to tell everybody, go and have your bath. And here are your pajamas. And then they would come down and I would be getting ready, like the school uniforms, the lunches. And I'll put my first in the line, and then my brothers, and then my 4 sisters. And so there'd be like this row of piles of school uniform with lunches. And, I would make sure that my mum had signed all the readers. I'd say to my mum, don't forget to sign the readers and stuff like that, because I don't know if you still have to do that, but we used to have these reading books that we had to read, and the parents had to sign off that they'd read them and all of this. So that was me. Very, very much a rule follower. I didn't like to be touched. Even from the youngest age, I did not want to be touched. And I would shut down, withdraw. I was like the cold child that my mother couldn't attach to. And, I felt so guilty about that later on when I learned about how much of a struggle it was for her to feel a connection with me physically. I didn't want to be breastfed. I didn't want to be held by her or my father. I just did not want to be touched. And this was very upsetting because I was the first baby for my parents, and they questioned themselves and they wondered why, and then they would try and not force to hug me, but they would just keep trying to hug me. And I didn't even like it when my mum had to brush my hair. I hated that, and I didn't like being bathed because they had to touch me, and it was just horrible for me. I used to dread my own bath time. I used to dread getting my hair done. I didn't carry on. I just sort of sucked it up, but I was never what you would call a clingy child. I was never affectionate, anything like that. That was not me. And my poor parents to this day, for the longest time, I felt so guilty about that because my mother still cries about it. Luckily for them, they went on and had more children who were affectionate and loved to be cuddled and all of that. But it just was never me. I had trouble making friends because, not only did I not want to be touched, like when I was at primary school, it was really common, like if you had a fight with someone, the teacher would make you shake hands with that person. So because I didn't want to be touched, even though I did want to resolve a conflict in the school playground, it never went over very well because I never wanted to shake the hand of the person that I was apologizing to. It didn't mean that I wasn't sincere in my apology. I absolutely was sincere, but I just did not want to touch anybody and I didn't want to be touched. And as a result of that, I get put in the naughty corner for being like disrespectful and not being genuine with my apology and things. So I started to really not like school that much. When I went to high school, I guess everything started to get worse for me because there were things going on in life around, my father left and, it was my mum looking after 6 kids and she was a very young mum. And I guess I just stepped into the role of being like a father because it just came very naturally to me. So I kept up with right, this is what we're going to do. And I took charge and I was in control and I was telling everybody what they needed to do. And do you know what I mean? I was doing all of that and I never even thought twice about it. I know now that was very damaging, being parentified at such a young age. But because of the autism, it was fine for me, like within my own head, in my own world, like looking from my eyes out, I felt like this was normal. And so I went with it. And then socially in high school, I struggled a lot. I didn't fit in. I wasn't meeting the developmental milestones, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, I was doing okay in school, but I wasn't getting along with people. I was still very frustrated at rule breakers and things like that. And don't get me wrong, like I wasn't an angel. There were times where I did try and go down the back of the oval, but I was overcome with like such a sense of guilt. And do you know what? This is not how bad, this is how strong the sense of rules are for me. I was, not fitting in and getting very bullied. And I was attending Frankston High School, right? And I lived on Winton Avenue. And Winton Avenue is like on the same block as the high school. Now, a lot of kids in my class, they were truanting and, they'd leave the school grounds when they weren't allowed to and stuff like that. And although I was getting bullied, it never occurred to me to skip school and just go home. It never occurred to me because you just don't do that. That's breaking a rule. Do you see what I mean? There were other things that happened in my life where my adherence to rules got in the way of me being able to thrive and flourish. I remember when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I was at that age where my dad used to take me to the doctors. So we used to go to a big medical clinic in Wells Street in Frankston. It's not there anymore, but it was Jeffrey Edelstein's medical clinic. And it was new at the time. It was very luxurious. It was painted in the colours of the time, like the pinky, corally, peachy colours. There was a lot of gold everywhere, gold tiles, there was chandeliers. There was a white baby grand piano that was usually getting played. And it was just a very luxurious medical clinic, all bulk billing. And I used to get throat infections a lot, really bad ones. And my mum was usually staying home with my siblings, and so my dad would drive me down to the medical clinic. And I was at that age where I guess, I'd been through puberty and everything, and I didn't want my dad coming in anymore. I just wanted to go into the doctors by myself. And so on this particular occasion, I said, I just want to go by myself. I just want to go by myself. And so they trusted me. My parents trusted me to go by myself. So I go down to the medical clinic and I, made my appointment, and because you could just walk in, and, I sat and waited, and then I went into the consulting room and I was there for my throat. Okay. And while I'm there for my throat, the doctor asks me other things. And anyway, one thing leads to another, and I get sexually assaulted. I came out of the consulting room shaking, like quivering. I don't know how I was even able to stand up. I knew that something not good, something not right. I knew that a rule had been broken. I knew that a rule had been broken and that this doctor had broken it. But to give you an example of how my autism affected me, instead of me screaming that I'd just been, sexually assaulted, I go up to the ladies at the counter, the receptionists, and I ask them, do they need me to sign anything before I leave? I mean, what? That's what I do. And then I managed to go home. I get myself home, and all the way I'm thinking to myself, do I tell my parents what happened? Because also, let's add into the mix, I'm Gen X, and all the other Gen Xers will understand what I'm about to say. I had only just got my freedom. So I knew that if I told my parents what had just happened, I knew that I was probably going to lose my freedom. I knew that they would assume maybe that I had done something wrong, that I had broken a rule. And the idea of me getting into trouble for breaking a rule was more than I could bear to stand. So I had this big internal, stuff going on all the way home. It felt like the longest walk home, because I used to walk everywhere because we didn't have money for bus fare. I know I sound like one of those ladies who says we walked 5 miles in the snow. It wasn't anything like that. It's about a half-hour walk. But anyway, so I walked, but all the time this is going around in my head. Do I tell them? Do I not tell them? Anyway, I didn't say anything. And this doctor had done a test, okay? And I went back down to the Edelstein's clinic, I think about 2 days later. And by this time, I'd had time to think about what had happened. And, I felt like, no, he broke a rule and he needs to pay for breaking a rule, right? So I go down to the clinic, and the same ladies are there that were there on the day that I saw this doctor. And anyway, I give them my name, which was different at the time to what you know me as now. I give them my name and I say, I'm here to pick up my test results. And they have a look and they're confused and they're like, you never had a test. And I was like, I had a test. And then I lost my what. I cracked it. I was, hysterical. I was hysterical because not only had this doctor sexually assaulted me, now there was no proof of the sexual assault, and now I was getting questioned when I wasn't the rule breaker. He broke the rule, and now he's going to get away with it, and there's nothing I can do about it. And that caused so much distress for me. I never wanted to see another doctor again. Even to this day, I avoid doctors, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, nothing ever happened. I remembered ringing, who was it? I can't remember, whoever was in, I rang the RACGP, that's right. I rang the RACGP and, I said what had happened, and they said, do you know the name of the doctor? And do you think I could remember the name of the doctor? I couldn't. Anyway, so nothing ever happened as a result of that. But I'm just sharing that with you because I wanted you to see, from the inside, this is what living with, and it's nothing I can change, right? I don't think I can change it. I think it's just part of who I am. I struggle with rules, and even when other people are breaking them, I still try and do the right thing. Anyway, so that happened. And then there were other instances of rule breaking that, really caused me a lot of stress and drama. Like there was a time I was driving my car and I was driving a Mercedes, and it was an old Mercedes, right? I just wanted to drive a luxury car. I was in my 20s or 30s. No, 30s? Late 20s, early 30s. And I had this Mercedes, right? Not a brand new one, just an old one. And it was red and I really loved it. And I was going to work at, I was managing like 5 Centrelink offices at the time, and life was good, right? I'm married, blah, blah, blah. And I had the windows down, and there were these 2 guys that were, trying to get my attention and all of this sort of stuff. And I was just ignoring them. And then they kept just not being very nice, trying to get my attention, calling out to me, hey, baby, all that kind of stuff. And anyway, they ended up having some kind of accident not an accident, they nearly had an accident. They were spending so much time trying to get my attention that they veered the car into a different lane. This was in Narre Warren on Princess Freeway or Princess Highway, whatever it's called, that they weren't aware. I think they thought that they were steering straight, that they were driving in a straight line, but they started to veer into the lane next to them, right? And anyway, it caused a little bit of a kerfuffle. Nobody was hurt or injured or anything, but their car span in almost 360, I think. It was crazy. I mean, it's 80 along that road. Anyway, I go to work and I'm shaken because I've seen this, and I'm shaken, and, I'm like, this was scary and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I drive home that day and there's a little card in my door from Narre Warren Police, of all places, saying, could I give them a call? So I'm like, yep, sure. And I've got no idea what this is about, right? I've never been in trouble before. I'm a good person, right? I follow the rules. So I'm not scared. I'm not nervous. I'm like, yeah, sure. I wonder what the issue is. So I give them a call and they're like, hey there, can you come down to Narre Warren Police Station? We need to have a conversation with you. I'm like, yep, fine, no problem. So I go down there, take my husband with me because we were going to go and get dinner afterwards, because it was like at night, and I'm still in my work clothes. Like I've literally come home from work, seen this card in the door, made the phone call, got Pete, who I was married to at the time, and off we've gone. Go to the police station. Like, yeah, come in. They wouldn't let Pete in with me. And I still was clueless about why I was there. They took me down the back, but I started to get worried that they wouldn't let Pete come with me. So now I'm starting to feel a little bit like, what the hell's going on here? Oh, sorry, I said H. I'm thinking, what's going on here, right? And anyway, they're like, how tall do you reckon you are? What colour do you call that hair? Is that blonde? Is that mouse brown? Like, what do you call that? What do you call your eyes? Would they be blue or would they be grey? And they're asking me all these things, right? And now I'm starting to get nervous because they haven't told me why I'm there. I don't know what's going on. And then eventually, after they take all this information from me, they say that 2 men have been down there and reported me for, trying to run them off the road. And they believe that those men were telling the truth because they're professional drivers. And so already I was accused of doing something I didn't do. And so here comes the anxiety, right? Because now I've got to prove I didn't do something. And how do you prove you didn't do something? And they're like, well, we know that these guys are telling the truth because, well, they reported you, and we took their blood alcohol and they hadn't been drinking. And I said, well, I haven't been drinking. I was on my way to work. It was like 8:30 in the morning. And they're like, well, it's too late for us to tell whether or not you've been drinking. So were you drinking? I was like, no, I haven't been drinking. They're asking me if I was under the influence of anything else. I was like, no. And then I'm sitting there, right, and I'm trying to justify how I didn't do anything. And then they're like, you know, you can go to jail for this. It's culpable driving. You can, go to court. We don't know what we're going to do with you. And I was I was being interviewed, like, it was the way that the workspace was set out was like all the police were sort of in this one area. And they were all at their desks doing their own thing. And I was off on the side with this other police officer, bawling my eyes out, hysterical, not understanding why I was in trouble. And I'm telling them, well, this is what happened. And I explain everything that happened. But they're already fixed on, no, you did the wrong thing. You caused this to happen. Because we don't have, we've only got your word, but for the other guy, we've got a witness, the passenger in the car. And I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do about that. I didn't have a passenger in the car to be my witness. And then they're like, it was really, 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 even just thinking about it now brings up trauma responses for me. Like I'm feeling it in my body. I still can't believe that happened. Anyway, they're like, well, why do you think these two men would make this up? And so I felt like a heel. Like I felt so embarrassed. I'm like, well, do you know what? They were whistling. They were, trying to get my attention. They were calling me baby. They were doing all of this. They were, they were just, I don't even know the word for it. Like they were just like harassing me while we were driving. I even wound my window up and I ignored them. I just drove straight ahead and I looked straight ahead because I didn't want to engage. And they said, oh, well, that fits what the two men were saying, because they said that you were just looking straight ahead and you had a stony expression on your face. I said, I did, because I didn't want to engage with them. Like, I'm not going to answer back and do all of this while we're all driving. No, I wound my window up and it was eyes ahead, of course. Like, that's what a responsible person who follows the rules would do. Anyway, they took... I can't even remember. I think it was nearly a week to make a decision about whether or not I was going to be charged. I didn't get charged, but that left in my mind that, again, here I've got an authority figure. So first it's a doctor and now it's police, that, people who aren't following the rules are getting away with stuff. And I'm following the rules, but I'm not a victim, but like I'm in the side where I shouldn't be. And it baffles me and it leaves me feeling helpless, because I think, what else can I do? Like I was already doing all of the right things. So anyway, this is how my fixation to it's mostly a fixation around rules. Sorry, it's just it brings up a lot of stuff that I don't even like to think about because of the rules. Like I'm still thinking it's not fair. This should never have happened to me because I'm a good person, right? I pride myself on honesty. I pride myself on integrity. I pride myself on dotting I's and crossing T's. So when people don't believe me, I don't cope with that at all. I find that very difficult to process. I just have to let time pass until it becomes like it's not on my radar anymore. It's just time. In terms of the business, in terms of private practice, how does it show up? Now, it's different for everyone. And look, I didn't get my diagnosis until I was in my 40s. And there are some things to understand, right? It's really nobody's, I'm not blaming anybody that I wasn't diagnosed at an earlier age. If I had been diagnosed at an earlier age, I absolutely would have benefited, because I absolutely would have had support. I would have had somebody to teach me how to play nicely. And that would have allowed me to have friends. I struggle to maintain long-term relationships with partners. I've been single for, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 6 years now. I don't know. And it's the happiest I've ever been, right? I go away by myself because I'm overwhelmed in noise. When I go to Dalesford, I love to go to a shop there called Empress and Wolf, right? It's my happy place. But do you know what? If there's more than 3 or 4 people in that shop, I'm overwhelmed. I've got to get out. It's the same as anywhere. I can handle going to places that are like big warehouses as long as there's only a couple of people in my aisle, right? I'm fine with that. I can go to a restaurant as long as I'm facing a window, because I don't want to be seeing people. I just want to be by myself. But anyway, back in the day, if I had been diagnosed, I would have been diagnosed with Aspergers. But when you get diagnosed today, right, you need to be a child. There needs to be all these criteria that are met. I'm not going to go into it, but and the diagnosis isn't made by one person. It's usually made by a psychologist who contributes to the diagnosis, an OT who contributes to the diagnosis, a speech therapist, and a pediatrician, right? Sometimes a psychiatrist. So it's usually, a combination of different professionals that work together to identify whether or not there is a diagnosis. But anyway, I think, and the other thing too is that I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. It's a bit emotional today, but sorry, just bear with me. What do I want to share with you? It took a long time for me to get diagnosed because 48 years ago, there wasn't the awareness like there is now. Plus, there was a lot of stigma. Anyway, so it didn't happen. I'm sure if there had been diagnosis, my life would have been very different and a lot easier, perhaps. But anyway, I was diagnosed much later in life. And the other thing to understand is that it's less common in women or girls than it is in boys. Boys tend to be, it's more recognisable, and more boys in Australia are diagnosed than girls, women, etc., etc. Plus, also by the time I was in my 40s, I'd learned to mask a lot of my symptoms, and I'd learned to mask a lot of things, and I'd learned to smooth things over. I think what led to the diagnosis was actually that period in my life where I was connecting back in with things that had given me solace in the past, like my spiritual practices and things like that. I think that was what unlocked everything for me. And from there, I knew that I needed to go and get help. And what I realized was that when I feel anxious, when anxiety comes up for me, it's usually probably 8 times or 9 times even out of 10 a consequence of somebody around me, whether that's at work or whether that's in private practice or whether that's in life, not following a rule, and me being on the receiving end of that, and me having to pay a consequence for somebody else not following a rule. So that is what triggers anxiety for me. And the diagnosis really helped me understand anxiety. And so I was very, 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 very grateful, because although there are some people who say they don't like a diagnosis or they don't like labels, for me, it gave me context to understand my life. It gave me context to understand my emotions. Like, I've got sensory issues galore. Apart from just not wanting to be touched, I'm very sensitive to loud noises. I don't like being in crowded places, never have. Anyway, all just this stuff. But it was, I don't know, it was like when I got that diagnosis, it was like, there's nothing wrong with you. This is just who you are. because all that time I felt so different to everybody else. And I thought, why doesn't anybody else get stressed like me? Why doesn't anybody else have these responses like me? What's wrong with me? So I always thought there was something wrong with me. But when I got the diagnosis, I realized, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just how I am. Okay, I have autism. I get it now. I get it. And so it was very, very empowering, and that helped me so much, because once I had that context and that knowledge, it made it easier for me to move freely and with less restriction in my world and my experience of the world around me. In my business, right? So it would have been called Aspergers ages ago, but now it's autism, and it would be called or referred to as high functioning, but there are a whole lot of issues around that. So I think I still stick with Aspergers, but that wouldn't be what the diagnosis is now. It'll be autism. But the thing about saying high functioning is that you're kind of implying that you don't need as much understanding, or that you don't need as much support as somebody who is low functioning, and that's not the case. You just need different support and different understanding. But anyway, that was kind of like my story. But when it comes to running my business, I think it works for me because I get to run my business by myself, which means I don't have to deal with other people's difficulty following rules. Because I struggled in employment settings, as you can imagine. But working for myself, it really works for me. I am somebody who can see big picture, and I can map things out really, really well, and that's a skill that I've got. While I don't have great attention for all the detail, like sometimes I'll have a typo in a post or something like that, but generally speaking, I'm good at mapping things out. I love processes, right? I love processes. Processes are my safe place. That's how I calm myself down. If I've got a process, then the process are the steps that you follow. And if you follow those steps, then you get to this outcome. And in business, that works really, really well for me, because I love to know what the steps are. So like if somebody wants to be more visible with their private practice, I can say, great, these are the steps, and I can walk them through those steps, and they'll increase their visibility. If somebody comes to me and says, I need more clients, I can say, great, these are the steps to get more clients, and I'll go boom, 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 and they'll work through all those steps, and then they get more clients. And there's so much evidence of this for me, and even now, like with with the high-level mentorship group, they all set goals for themselves when they started. They've just hit the halfway point with their mentoring, or not even. Sorry, they're not even at the halfway point with the mentoring, and they've all hit their goals. They follow the steps, they hit the goals. The ladies in Marketing with Soul, they check in every week with updates. They're hitting their goals. Somebody got a contract, somebody got an inquiry, somebody got 3 new clients, someone made their first $10,000, somebody made their first $5,000, somebody got their first 3 clients. So when I give them the steps and they take those steps, they get the results. So for me, processes are really easy. I love them. I know that they work. I test them before I, give them to everybody. And I know, hand on heart, 100%, if you follow the processes that I put in place, you can absolutely get the outcome that those processes are designed to give you. So in that sense, rules work really well. Rules and processes work really well for me, and I've been able to create a business based on my quirks. And it's a fabulous business, and I love it, and I wouldn't swap it for the world. Okay, it means having high-functioning autism or having Asperger's means that I really love systems, I really love structure, but I also really love routine, right? So if someone messes with my routine, no. So I control my diary. I have a routine of, right, this is when I see people, this is not when I see people, this is how I do this is how I do that, da 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 da. So one of my skills is not only for myself, but helping other people find, using that masculine energy to create structure and systems and routines that are going to give them the same peace of mind I have, because I know that they're going to work, right? One of the other, I don't know the word to say it, but one of the other things that I really appreciate about my diagnosis is that I feel like it really just, without, I don't know the way to say it. It's about honesty and integrity, right? It's not in me to be dishonest, because that would be breaking a rule, and I can't do that. So the stuckness, the adherence to following the rules and to doing the right thing, by default means that I'm always going to be working in integrity, because I just can't not. I couldn't not. Like, it's not in me not to do that because of this condition that I have. So I'm often known for my honesty and integrity, which is such a valuable thing for me to have for my business, right? It builds trust, sure, but I couldn't imagine, and it's not just in business, it's in friendships, it's in, everything. This is because the rules are the rules. I can't not be honest or working in integrity. One of the things that I struggle with, though, is when my integrity is questioned. So, for example, if somebody does like break a rule or follow a process, like as I mentioned in the past, sometimes people will just stop their payments, right? No particular reason, just stop their payments. They've already had the service, they've got the result, and I've approved a payment plan for them because I want to help, and then they've just decided to stop paying, right? That doesn't sit well with me, because they're breaking a rule now. And, for the longest time, I didn't know how to handle that. Didn't realize it was because I didn't have processes that were solid enough around managing, payment defaults and cancellations and stuff like that. I didn't have those processes in place. I do now. But at the time when that was happening, it was very, 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 very frustrating. And I used to feel like this isn't fair, this isn't right, they're doing the wrong thing, all of that. But because I am very passionate about my faith, I'm very passionate about spirituality, I would tell myself, stop, 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 stop. What does your higher self say about this? And I would just say, do you know what? Let it go, let it go. It's creating space for something new. Just, let it go. You don't need to be worked up over this, just learn from it, blah, 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 blah. So I would try and do that. But what would happen was I would get nasty emails from people and feel very, very upset about that, because again, that's breaking a rule. Like, you should never send a nasty email with horrible words in it. You should never do that. That's just not a thing, and we're all professionals, and da 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 da. So that would trigger something in me, and then I would just block that person, right? So I was like, do you know what? I don't want to receive any communication from you in future, and I would remove them from my world. And so now there's a bunch of people who've been removed from my world who don't say very nice things about me. And they're together and they've all got a shared experience, right? They all defaulted on their payments. They were all removed from my world, and now they like to get together and say not nice things. But you know what? It's got nothing to do with me. What other people say about me is none of my business. I think if other people can't work in integrity, that says more about them than it does about me with a boundary. So anyway, honesty and integrity are they're not something I can't not have because I've got this fixation on rules. The other thing that really I experience is a passion for my work. And I don't know what it's like for you, but for me, as someone who's got Aspergers or high functioning autism, I have a really deep passion for private practice, and not only private practice, I have a really deep passion for empowering everybody to have a flourishing and thriving private practice that really, truly, wholly fulfills them at a soul level, where they get to receive, they get to be in that feminine energy and receive, but they also get to be in the masculine energy of giving. And so it's this beautiful energy exchange. I believe that everyone should be able to work in that beautiful flow state. I believe that you're always supported. I believe that you're divinely supported. And I believe myself that I want to constantly improve what I'm doing. And, to that extent, my word for this year, as you know, is refine. So that's what I'm doing today. Like, I've decided to cancel my ClickFunnels account and cancel my MemberVault account, and I've signed up with ThriveCart. So I'll be transferring everything over to ThriveCart, and within ThriveCart, I'm going to be, re-recording some videos for everybody. I'll be adding in a few new resources for everybody, and it just feels so good to be refining and improving something I've already got that's working. So the first thing that's going to move over to ThriveCart is the Marketing with Soul program. And I'm really, 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 really excited to get it over there. It's already been through 2 or 3 revisions, and now it's getting a 4th one. And it's really lovely because people who've been through it previously get to see all the new changes and all the new improvements and all the new things. And it's just so lovely. And I get to lead by example and show them that, hey, you know what? You don't have to keep creating new things. Like, just improve the thing that you've got. And it's amazing. So there's some of the ways that I think having Asperger's or high functioning autism works for me, or I have found a way to make it work. Socially, there are things I still need to work on, but I have my practice now. It's entirely online, and I feel so at ease with that. It allows me to do so much more for my clients because I'm happier and I'm more calm and I'm more relaxed and I get to be more in flow. The idea of running in-person group supervision sends chills through me. There's no way I could do it, especially if people wanted to be in my space, especially if somebody wanted to give me a hug. Oh, no. But I can absolutely enjoy running my group supervision online. That's perfect. I love that. If everybody said, hey, let's get together at the end of the year, I would go probably. I don't know. Like, I've been to one, and it was fine because there are only a few of us there. But I don't know that I could go to another one. People keep saying to me, "Hey, when are you going to run a retreat? When are you going to run a retreat?" And I love the idea of running retreats, but I only want there to be 2 or 3 other people at my retreat. So I would have to think about what that was going to look like. And, I'd have to give a lot of thought about costing it out. And like if we all had to stay in the same place, like I was thinking, I can run a retreat in Daylesford because I'm there like so many times a year. I've thought, I can run a retreat in Daylesford, but I only want 2 or 3 people to be there. So I don't know if it's going to be financially viable or not. So I don't know. I have to think about stuff like that more so than other people who are like, retreat, yay, let's go. Like, I'm never going to go to the Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within or Date with Destiny because I don't want to be around all those people. Like, that's a nightmare for me. I'll do it online. that works for me. So anyway, I just want you to understand that if you, what do I want to say? Just give me a minute here. I guess I just want to share that people are just people, and I'm just a person, just like you. There's nothing special about me. The only thing that's different about me is, I just have these little things. That's all. But I make them work for my business, not against my business. And I want you to know that if you have, anything, whether it's, I don't know, if you have anything, if you've ever been diagnosed with anything, I don't want you to feel like it limits you. I want you to see how it empowers you, right? And how it makes you so different, because you can really mean it when you do something, like you own it fully when you do something. And I want you to own what makes you different and not be limited. I don't want you to say, because now there are all these little ones that have been diagnosed. Like, there was a real boom when I had my private practice. I remember it was I don't know, I want to say 2017 to 2020. I had every second appointment with somebody wanting to be assessed for autism. It was a real boom. I don't know where it happened. I don't know why it happened, sorry. But there was a real demand for parents wanting to get their children tested. If you have a child that has been diagnosed with something like autism, or actually I can only speak to autism, so ignore that. If they've been diagnosed with autism, I want you to understand that it's not limiting, and it doesn't need to be limiting. They will find a way of making it work for them. Just like I found a way of making it work for me. And I'm talking to parents of, children who've been diagnosed as not needing much support. They will need some support, but it doesn't have to limit them, in the ways that you might be thinking. It's not as bad as what you might be thinking. They can absolutely do more than what some people who don't have the diagnosis do. They can absolutely do some things better than people who don't have the diagnosis. You know what I mean? If you have a child that's been diagnosed with autism, they're going to be honest. They're probably going to blurt stuff out without even thinking about it, because it's true. They're not going to, and this is what I used to do as well. I was such an embarrassment, I think, for my mum. I used to do ballet and calisthenics competitions on weekends. And, the things I used to say, the things that used to come out of my mouth, I can remember one time I was standing up on a table and my mum was applying leg tan. It's this horrible brown muck that you have to put on your legs, because when you're under the bright light on the stage, your legs look really pale and grey without it. So it's like this you look like an Oompa Loompa, and it's horrible. It's like the consistency of toothpaste, or it used to be. And you got hairs on your legs, right? Because you're a kid, and they're these long blonde hairs, and they're all getting smushed around by the paste, and it hurts. And it's it hurt me because I've got sensory issues. Plus I'm getting touched. Yuck. So I was getting my leg tan on. And there was another mother who was doing something. I think she was adjusting my costume or something like that. And then I say to this other mother, right in front of my mum, something that really embarrassed my mum. And to me, it was just a fact. And to me, facts are truth, and who cares? But I could see it really embarrassed my mum, and I got in trouble for it later on. And, I kind of learned, oh, so you don't tell the truth. But it's something I struggled with for the longest time, and I really had to learn to be mindful about thinking before I speak. So if you have an autistic child, there's a really good chance that your child is going to give it to you straight and be honest with you all the time. if they're like me and maybe they get anxiety, have a look for the patterns around anxiety. It took me a long time to realize that my anxiety was caused by the absence of a process or a procedure. Now I know I need processes and procedures. I make more and I create more, and I even have started sharing them with my communities, and I sell my processes on Etsy now, because why not? I'm probably the best person to make a process because it's going to work. So anyway, look, I just wanted to do this podcast today because, well, as I said, it was really lovely to hear from people about, their own experiences with autism and wanting me to speak more into mine. And do you know what? It's never come onto my radar before as something to discuss. So thank you for asking me to speak into it. If you have any other questions, I can answer them for you from the perspective of somebody with a diagnosis, not as a professional, because I don't do that anymore. But yeah. Anyway, that's the episode for today. So thank you very, very much for listening. I appreciate you more than you know. And yeah, we'll have another episode on Wednesday. Hope you have a really, 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 really lovely weekend. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I hope that you loved this episode as much as I loved putting it together for you. To get more resources to help you in your private practice, head over to Instagram. My handle is @theprivatepracticecoach. And also, if you want more inquiries and referrals for your business, let me know. I have a program called Clients on Demand that opens every quarter, and I can absolutely get you some information for that as well. You are doing an amazing job. Thank you for sharing your gifts with the world.